Welcome to the Green Building Show, where we investigate green design and building trends throughout Australia.
In this series of the Green Building Show, we've been looking at passive design. In this episode, we'll be looking at how passive solar design works in different Australian climates. We'll be seeking the expertise of architect Oliver Steele and Research Director at the Institute for Sustainable Futures, Caitlin McGee, on all matters passive design. First of all, let's get a recap on passive design.
They call it passive because basically you don't have to do anything once you've designed it. The house works for you. So that's why it's called passive, because you don't need expensive, what are called active systems like air conditioning or heating, and the house does the work for you.
While passive design principles are not new, the need and desire for them in our buildings is becoming stronger as people become more environmentally aware. People are more conscious of not relying on heaters and air conditioners to make our homes comfortable. Even the ancient Greeks practiced passive design.
I think about 400 BC, Aeschylus, the Greek playwright, said that only fools and barbarians don't face their houses towards the winter sun. And now, 2,500 years later, it seems that in a large part, we haven't learned from this kind of basic knowledge. So passive design is really about facing the building towards the winter sun, and that also allows you to exclude summer sun.
Australia has an enormously varied climate. We asked our experts how passive design principles need to differ around Australia.
There are a number of climates in Australia, but if we start with temperate climates, it's really about facing your living areas north, making sure that most of your glazing faces north, making sure that for summer your house is able to capture cooling breezes and have a little bit of cross ventilation for natural cooling. It's about making sure that your windows are shaded so that you can actually let the sun in winter and exclude it in summer. Then it's about making sure the building envelope, so the sort of shell of the building, is really well insulated. Probably the main difference is when you're in a tropical climate, so up the top end of Australia, where the strategies are quite different and it's pretty much always lightweight, with lots of ability to open up for natural ventilation, but also very good insulation where you are, kind of air conditioning areas so that cool doesn't escape. So the strategies are actually a bit different for tropical climates.
It's amazing how many buildings are built, how many houses are built even today with east-west facing windows when there's no reason for them to be east-west facing. They could be north-facing. And north-facing gives you a much better solar outcome. It's
really about making the most of the sun as a resource. So in a temperate climate, you would make sure that in winter, as much of your house as possible, and particularly living areas, because you spend most of your time in them, actually have access to winter sun. So that would be looking at the layout. As I said before, making sure that living areas are facing north or have a northerly exposure where possible. Making sure that most of your glass has a northerly exposure. Avoiding too much western glass, because that actually gets very hot in summer and is difficult to shade. So it's really about design to make the most out of the sun. I mean, essentially it's about letting the sun in winter when you need it and excluding it in summer when you don't want it. So that would be looking at sort of location of rooms, shading. They're probably the main elements, and also kind of looking at the building materials you use, and insulation is very important too. So there are probably two categories of insulation that you need to use. One is reflective insulation that's really good at kind of keeping radiant heat out, and the other is bulk insulation, and you can get combinations of those, but you need to make sure you're kind of using both of them in any passive design strategy. So for heating, it's really about capturing the sun when you need it, and for cooling, it's really about excluding the sun when you need it and capturing cooling breezes instead. So you really need to be able to kind of design a home to to account for all seasons and make sure that you can get the warmth when you need it, store it potentially through thermal mass, and also be able to get rid of heat in a house when you need to in summer.
In the next episode of the Green Building Show, we'll be looking at thermal mass. We'll explore what it means and how lightweight materials such as Sky-On matrix cladding and Stria cladding and heavyweight building materials are affected by thermal mass.